We may have a cover-up within a cover-up in the Epstein pedophile cover-up by the Trump administration. And it ties back to Todd Blanche, the number 2 lawyer in the Department of Justice, senior leadership, former criminal defense lawyer for Donald Trump, and his relationship with Ghislaine, Maxwell's lawyer, her new lawyer, David Oscar Marcus, down in Miami. They're old buddies. They're old friends. And so when I heard in the new reporting that Donald Trump is sending Todd Blanche to go meet in prison with Ghislaine Maxwell, and that at the same time, this buddy of the Todd Blanche is lobbying and campaigning and has admitted to being in conversations with the Trump administration about a pardon, I'm going to put 2 and 2 together right here on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. Okay, here's my working theory. Todd Blanche, who's got a close relationship, I'm going to play you the clip in a minute, between himself and David Oscar Marcus, are going to deliver something to Donald Trump. When Blanche goes in to meet, and he's already announced that he will, with Maxwell, he knows in advance what Maxwell's going to say. I am sure that in his conversations with Marcus, his buddy, Marcus has told them, if you give me a pardon for my client and get her out of that 20-year conviction by a 9-0 jury with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt in New York, if you do that for her involvement with a predatory, sex trafficking, pedophile, girl raping ring, if you get my client Donald Trump out of this, and you have her say and tell me so I can announce it that he is not involved, you'll get your pardon. That is what we're watching here in the preliminary steps. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And let me report on it. First, let me show you how close the relationship between Blanche and David Oscar Marcus, a fellow lawyer down here in Miami, is. Because he had a podcast. He has a podcast, David Marcus. And who was his guest? Not once, but twice, his buddy, Todd Blanche. Let's roll the clip.
Todd Blanche For the Defense. Everybody knows who Todd is, and he's the first guest on For the Defense to appear twice. So welcome to the show, Todd.
That is an honor. Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate it.
So, I mean, you were a federal prosecutor. I'm sure you never could have imagined this when you were first starting out as an assistant United States attorney. How did you get here, Todd? How did you end up representing Donald Trump and being in trial in the first of its kind case?
Well, no, you're right, David. I'd never imagined, even during the trial, I would kind of check myself occasionally and be surprised at where I was every day. You know, I've had the opportunity to represent a couple of folks over the past 4 or 5 years that were kind of in President Trump's orbit. And once the DA, there were rumblings that there was going to be an indictment in January, February 2023. I had a conversation with him. I was actually skiing with my family on Super Bowl Sunday in Colorado, and he called me, and we had a good conversation. I went with my wife to have dinner with him and his wife a few weeks later. And we clicked. You know, he's an enigma. You know, he's an interesting guy. Everybody in this country, most people in the world, frankly, have an opinion about him, and some may be right, some may be wrong. But he's a really interesting man, and not only because of his past as president of the United States, but just the life that he's led. And so we got along very well. We still get along pretty well. And so I think it's an interesting attorney-client relationship. But no, I'm as surprised as the next guy. I went to night law school, so here we are.
Well, so you're on the slopes and you get a call and it's actually Donald Trump on the phone?
Yeah, well, we had finished skiing for the day. We're getting ready to watch the Super Bowl with my daughter and her friends, and we were at a little condo right at the base of the mountain, and I got a West Palm Beach number. I didn't know he was going to call. I was shocked. I didn't think anybody would believe me, so I grabbed my daughter and dragged her into the room that we were, my bedroom, and put President Trump on speaker for a minute so that she would, in case he never called me again.
Now, is it a big stretch to imagine this phone call between these two collegial buddies, in which Marcus, who's campaigning and lobbying to get her out of prison, says if you interview her, you're going to be happy because she's going to go out of her way to say that Donald Trump was not involved and had no knowledge of the Epstein pedophile conduct. And in return, she gets a free pass and gets out of jail for all of her role in putting in connecting and grooming these girls to Jeffrey Epstein, all under the willfully blind eye of Donald Trump, who ran with him for 15 years, dating women, seeing him with young women, making comments about his secret life and making comments about him being an enigma. That's what we're watching, I believe. So this is the first step, right, in the process, sending in Todd Blanche for the meeting. But he's not going in blind because he's already had the conversation. And he gets to spoon feed us the information, because if it goes awry and she doesn't say what he wants, he'll say, I can't reveal those conversations. If he gets what David Marcus has probably promised him, then he'll say, oh, I just met with Ghislaine Maxwell. This is her own. She'll say anything at this point. Let's call it out. She's desperate. She's only a couple of years into a 20-year prison sentence. She doesn't want to be there. She was a jet-setting party girlfriend for Epstein. She came from a rich family who was equally disgraced. Her father, I believe, committed suicide over financial misdealings. Her feet have never touched the ground since she was a child. So how do you think she's doing in prison? She will say anything to get out. And she has a very weak appeal. Her appeal that's up to the Supreme Court, barely, is that when Epstein entered into a plea deal or a non-prosecution agreement, what we call an NPA, down in Miami 20 years ago, 15 years ago, with Alex Acosta. Side note, Alex Acosta later got kicked upstairs by Donald Trump and became his labor secretary in the first term, but then he was the U.S. attorney for Miami, and I was practicing there at the time. He entered into a deal with Epstein in which he let him plead guilty to one state count, not even federal human trafficking, sex trafficking, one state count of soliciting prostitution from a minor. And buried in it was some language about them not going after anybody related to Epstein for those issues in Southern District of Florida prosecution. That's not where Ghislaine Maxwell was prosecuted. She was prosecuted in New York. She didn't sign that agreement. She wasn't a party to that agreement. She's not a third-party beneficiary of that agreement. Those are the arguments. Arguments that I don't make, as well as Donald Trump's own lawyers have made in the last few days to the United States Supreme Court in their filing with another criminal defense lawyer of Donald Trump, now our Solicitor General, John Sauer. He lays out the case against Maxwell and why she doesn't deserve the benefit and won't get the benefit of the non-prosecution agreement. So Marcus knows he's out of moves. He's a very good lawyer, by the way, but he's out of moves. His last move is to kiss the ring and any other body part of Donald Trump and to try to get that pardon. And this close relationship that I've just discovered here on the MeidasTouch network between Blanche and Marcus is going to be the conduit for this unholy bargain that's being, I'm sure, negotiated. So don't be shocked, and I'll come back and talk to you after Blanche goes and has the interview, after he reveals the outcome of the interview, and after the pardon is approved. Because this is how Donald Trump is going to clean up the Epstein mess. He's going to find Ghislaine Maxwell was victimized, even though she was the one that preyed on girls. Yeah? She was a victim, like the Jan 6th insurrectionists were a victim. You heard that there was once a comment by Donald Trump about Ghislaine Maxwell. I wish her well, there's pictures, of course, with Ghislaine Maxwell and Donald Trump. So we got all that going on. I'm going to continue to follow it right here on the MeidasTouch network and on Legal AF. There's lots of ways to support what we do. We and independent commentary and media need your help now more than ever. It's scary out there. You know, we're out. You know, we're balls out in our, you know, we get it right. We don't blow smoke or sunshine. But you see what's happening to mainstream media owned by corporations. You know, my counterparts are getting fired left and right. We won't get fired, but we got to stay on the air. Hit the subscribe button for MeidasTouch. Come over to Legal AF, the YouTube channel. Do the exact same thing there. No paywall. We just need your love of your thumb hitting the subscribe button. And Legal AF, the Substack as well. So until my next report on all things Legal AF, including the podcast, Legal AF, the podcast, I'm Michael Popok. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.